Now, in this video, I'm going to discuss foundations of language, brain development and language, and biological development. So, brain development and biological preparedness. Let's start with this question. Is language a gift of biology, or it is a triumph of culture, or it is a negotiation between the two? At the intersection of brain development and language lies one of the deepest mysteries of human existence. How does a newborn, seemingly fragile and helpless, within a few years, gains command of the most complex symbolic system on Earth? Is this a miracle driven by genes, neurons, or nature? Brain development, the biological stages of language, neural proliferation and pruning. At birth, there are 100 billion neurons, but little connectivity. Syntactic overproduction. Early years create vast networks. Pruning. Use it or lose it. Unused synapses fade, sharpening efficiency. Implication. The environment is not just a backdrop, but it also sculpts the brain's linguistic architecture. Hemispheric specialization. Left hemisphere dominant for syntax and fine-grained phonology. Right hemisphere prosody, metaphor, pragmatic context. Plasticity in childhood. A child with left hemisphere damage may still acquire language, an adult cannot. Myelination, speeding up communication between brain regions, critical for fast processing and language tasks. Biological development and language acquisition, genetic contributions. FOXP2 gene linked to speech and grammar deficits. KE family case is very famous. Uh, Polygenic influence. Multiple genes interact with environment. Genetics provides potential, but environment tunes expression. Evolutionary perspective. Dunbar's social brain hypothesis. Language evolved as a social grooming. Dunbar's number, a theoretical limit of about 150 people in a subtle social network. Language as a survival tool, cooperation, planning, deception. Archaeological evidence, symbolic artifacts about 70,000 years ago suggest coevolution of brain and language. Critical period hypothesis. Lanenberg, 1967. Language acquisition is biologically constrained, effortless before puberty, increasingly difficult after. And you can see that in Pakistani families who go to England or America, you will see that their children they learn English just like native speakers. But those grown-up people who go there in our age, for example, or older age after puberty, they there's a clear difference between them. Evidence: deaf and sign language studies. Deaf children exposed to sign language early achieve native-like fluency. Late learners of American Sign Language show reduced grammatical mastery. Nicaraguan Sign Language 1980s spontaneously emerged among children, showing innate drive for grammar, but quality of grammar depended on age of first exposure. Feral and isolated children. Ginny Wiley, 1970. That girl was discovered and she learned vocabulary very quickly, but she could not learn syntax. There are two videos of the scholars who did research or worked with her. They are available. You can watch them on YouTube. Supports a critical period because in young age you can learn language quickly, but after that puberty or after that critical period is passed, you cannot learn it. Chelsea, 1990s, hearing restored later, and same grammatical deficits. The story of Jenny Wiley, what her life taught us about language and development. In 1970, a 13-year-old girl was discovered in Los Angeles who shocked the world of psychology and linguistics. Her name was kept secret, so researchers called her Jenny, like a genie suddenly released from a bottle, entering the world too late. Early life, 1957 to 1970, Jenny's childhood was one of extreme abuse and isolation. Her father kept her locked in a small room, often tied to a potty chair. unable to move freely. She was rarely spoken to, and if she made a noise, she was beaten. By the time she was found, Jeannie had almost no experience of normal human interaction. Discovery 1970. Her case came to light when her mother sought help for her own health. A social worker noticed Jeannie's condition and reported it. She was 13 but behaved like a toddler, and she could not chew food, walk normally, or use language. Both parents were charged, but her father died by suicide before trial. Scientific importance of this case. Janie's case drew massive attention because it seemed to offer a real life test of the critical period hypothesis. In language learning, according to Eric Lanneberg, humans must learn language before puberty or they will never acquire full grammar. Um, could Ginny still learn a language after missing this window? Rehabilitation and research. A team of psychologists and linguists worked with Ginny. She quickly learned basic self care, enjoyed music, and communicated nonverbally supervising with surprising charm with the supervisors. And she also learned many new words and began combining them. But there was a limit. Unlike normal children, Ginny never had a language explosion that our children have. Like in young age, they start learning, and then suddenly you see a burst. A baby starts cooing and babbling, and one word and two words, and then suddenly you see there is a burst of language. She did not show that. She could not form sentences with proper grammar. This suggested that critical period of her language acquisition had passed, unfortunately, when she was discovered. Unfortunately, Jeannie became the center of conflict between researchers and caregivers. Some wanted her to help, others wanted to publish research. She was moved between homes, sometimes mistreated again, and her progress declined. Eventually, she stopped speaking and became silent once more. Later life, funding ended in 1974, and Jeannie was placed in foster care, where she faced more neglect. Little is known about her today, if she is alive. I mean, she is believed to live in an adult care facility in California. If alive, she would be in her late 60s now. Why the case was famous? It tested Chomsky's idea of inborn language acquisition device or innate ability that children are born with. It also accentuated, evinced, and highlighted Landenberg's critical period hypothesis, but language must be learned before puberty. It raised serious ethical questions about how science should treat vulnerable subjects. What are the key takeaways? Some of the key takeaways are Ginny showed that vocabulary uh, can be learned after puberty, but grammar cannot be fully mastered, supporting the critical period hypothesis. Her tragic story reminds us that abuse and neglect also damage cognition, making it hard to separate biology from trauma. Ethically, her case warns researchers never to exploit vulnerable people in the name of science. Second, language acquisition. Pronunciation, particularly resistant after adolescence. Like when we speak, we cannot speak like native speakers. Uh, Maturation hypothesis. Language switches on as the brain matures, much like walking or puberty. Invariance hypothesis. Certain neural structures, such as Broca's area, are always required for language, regardless of age or experience. Beyond critical period, plasticity and limits. Sensitive periods rather than absolute cutoffs. Adults can achieve high proficiency of L2, but often with accent processing cost. Famous example is Steve Kaufman. He is a retired bureaucrat. He started teaching. Now he has a lot of videos on YouTube, I think with the help of his children. And he was saying in one of his videos that he learned, he knows 15 to 20 languages, and most of these languages he learned them after 16, after his retirement. So that is something positive and optimistic for people like us who are learning English in late in life. ERP and fMRI, adult additional recruit additional frontal areas, effort for learning, bilingual advantage, lifelong bilingual delays, dementia. Uh, that is research. So research. It is grounded in research, And you can also see it on American TV shows. Young children from Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India, when they take part in spelling competitions or science competitions, they are likely to outperform their counterparts who are often white native uh, mi- children. So similarly, there are other benefits as well, like delayed dementia and better executive control, multitasking, and so on and so forth. And of course, if you know more than one languages, it will also increase your uh, future prospects of jobs and making new connections and a lot of other things. Like Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif, he knows a lot of languages, so he gets on well with many world leaders in the Middle East and beyond. That's a positive thing. Disorders and variability in language development, specific language impairment (SLI), genetic basis affects grammar. Aphasia in children often recover better than adults due to plasticity. Dyslexia, phonological processing deficits linked to atypical brain asymmetry. Autism spectrum disorders, language profile varies, often pragmatic deficits. So these show that biological preparedness is not uniform. Competing theoretical models, nativist view, Chomsky, language acquisition device or innate ability, universal grammar, biological blueprint. Interaction view, interactionist view, Thomas Allo's book Constructing Grammar, published by Harvard University Press. So Thomas Allo basically observed his own children. He kept a diary, just like M.K. Halliday did. So his research is also interesting. So he says that interactionist view believes that biology provides potential. Social interaction shapes actual development. And that's very interesting. Neuroconstructivist view believes that brain develops through dynamic interaction between biology, environment, and learning, and rejects both rigid nativism and pure empiricism. What is the evidence? Feral children and isolated children. Like Jenny's case, I've already discussed in this video. It supports because she could learn vocabulary, not syntax. It supports critical period. And Chelsea, her hearing was restored later, and she also showed similar deficits. Chelsea's story is interesting. Let me share with you the story. Language after hearing was restored. Chalice was born in California in 1964. She was profoundly deaf, but doctors misdiagnosed her as having a learning disability instead of a hearing loss. Because of this mistake, she never received proper treatment as a child and grew up without learning language. And when she was 30 years old, doctors finally discovered she was deaf, not intellectually disabled. She was fitted with hearing aids, which suddenly allowed her to hear, and everybody hoped she would quickly catch up and learn to speak. Chelsea did begin to pick up words, but just like Ginny, she could never master grammar, and her sentences remained simple, often missing structure. For example, she could say words like book table, but not full sentence, like the book is on the table. Her case strongly supports Eric Lenberg's critical period hypothesis. After puberty, people may learn words but cannot develop full grammatical language. Chelsea showed that even with normal intelligence, missing early exposure to language leads to permanent gaps. Neuroscience of language development. ERP studies, young learners show native like and 400p 600. Older learners are slower. fMRI, early bilinguals share networks, late bilinguals recruit distinct ones. MEG and infants, uh, it reveals timing of syllable discrimination before 12 months. Sleep and memory consolidation. REM sleep critical for grammar learning. Hebbian learning, neurons that fire together, wire together. Sensitive period, syntac- synaptic density peaks at 2 years. Declines towards adolescence. Bilingual advantage, lifelong bilingual linked to delayed onset of dementia. Neuroimaging of L2 learners, early bilinguals, they have shared networks. Late bilinguals have distinct, often less efficient networks. Now, in Pakistan, as we have people who can speak more than one language, usually three to four. So, Pakistan multilingual ecology is natural laboratory for testing critical period. early versus late bilinguals, early Urdu English bilinguals, because mostly in our schools we teach English, and Urdu is the national language, but at home people usually speak Punjabi, Pashto, and other languages. So it's very interesting. So we can test early Urdu English bilinguals versus late English learners in secondary school. Code switching research studies in Lahore or Karachi, they can show Urdu English mixing as cognitive adoption. Socioeconomic divide: elite schools introduce English early, and rural schools they delay. So linguistic inequality, and similarly, proposed ERP study compare early versus late bilinguals in English and Urdu, and Urdu and Punjabi pairs compare neural responses to English syntax violations in early versus late learners. Hypothesis is early learners show native-like P600, late learners show delayed atypical responses. And I have witnessed it as a teacher when I was and started teaching at school level first, and I taught in schools where children usually came from low middle class. Then I moved to schools where elite class, their children they used to come and study. So in those schools, I saw that children they could develop language just like native speakers. That was very interesting. And I taught at college as well. And then I started teaching at university. So I have seen these students and these. Although I was teaching senior classes, but still I used to go and talk to young children as well. Because usually in Pakistan, schools are in the same building. There are no separate schools for juniors and senior classes. So I have personal experience. I've witnessed these things. So these are real, and scholars can conduct research on these. Policy implications. English should English be introduced earlier, or should Urdu or mother tongue foundation be prioritized to avoid cognitive overload? I believe that primary education should be in mother tongue. However, you can conduct your study, and then we can see what should be the policy implications. uh, Interdisciplinary crossroads: psychology, development trajectories of cognition of language, education, implications for curriculum design in multilingual societies, neuroscience, brain plasticity as window into human learning potential, philosophy, what does it mean for free will if language learning is biologically and constrained, ethics, should vulnerable subjects such as Ginny ever be studied for science? Now, that's a very important question. Questions for reflection. You can discuss it in the class if you're teaching psycholinguistics, or you, if you're students, you can discuss them, and or you can write essays on them. Is critical period a window that closes, or a slope that declines? How do genetics, such as FOXP2 gene and environment, interact in language learning? Should Pakistan's education policy align with neuroscience, privileging early bilingual exposure? If biology primes language, why do disorders still emerge? If language is biologically primed, why do some children still struggle with language disorders? And can adults overcome biological limits with technology such as AI tutors, neuro stimulations, and neurostimulations? Can adults ever truly overcome biological constraints with effort and technology? Now, because technology is making progress by leaps and bounds, so this thing can also be seen. You can also conduct debates in classes such as critical period is absolute. Has it been resolved? You can conduct a mini research project. You can design a Pakistan study comparing early versus late bilinguals in one local language, and pair it with Urdu Punjabi or Urdu English or Saraiki English. You can write an essay. You can evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of Noam Chomsky's universal grammar, and you can also role play policy discussion. Should Pakistan shift to bilingual education at preschool? So, in this way, you will be discussing biology, environment, language outcomes. I believe that language is not an afterthought of evolution, it is the very architecture of human thought embedded in the biological unfolding of the brain. By understanding this foundation, Pakistani students are not merely consumers of Western theory, they are poised to test, challenge, and expand it. From Gilgit to Gawadar, from Kashmir to Karachi, and from Darya Khan to Dadu, classrooms can become the laboratories where the next breakthroughs on critical field of bilingualism or neuroplasticity emerge. So, in this vision, Pakistan ceases to be a recipient of knowledge, and it becomes a producer of paradigms, generator of global knowledge, and that will earn a good name for Pakistan and it will also enable us to contribute towards the existing knowledge. Thank you very much.